It is March 2026, and Edgar Cayce warned exactly what would happen on March 3rd of this year, when the moon would turn red, or become a blood moon, as many people call it. Almost 100 years ago, without the internet, without modern telescopes, and with nothing other than his mind in a trance state, this man described a night when the sky would be stained crimson, a night when millions of people would look upward and feel something they could not explain in words, a sensation in their chest, a question they had ignored for years that would suddenly return with all its force. Why am I here tonight? That moon exists. It is out there, red, real, and silent. Cayce did not call it an astronomical phenomenon. He called it a sign. But here is what nobody is telling you. Cayce did not issue this warning to create fear. He warned about it because he said that this specific moment, this date, and this image in the sky would represent a window, one of the most powerful windows in centuries, a moment when humanity would have the opportunity to consciously choose the path it would follow during the coming decades. And you are watching this video precisely today. That is not a coincidence. Think about it for a moment. Out of all the videos you could be watching right now, something brought you here. Something inside you recognized the title. Something resonated. According to Cayce's own words, that is exactly what happens to people who are ready to receive what the sign has to tell them. Not everyone sees it. Not everyone feels it. But you do. Before I tell you exactly what Cayce said, however, you need to understand something crucial. His words were not written in simple language. They were encoded in layers, layers of symbolism, historical context, geopolitics, and spirituality, which today, in 2026, take on a meaning that literally sends chills down your spine, because what is happening in the world right now fits, piece by piece, with what he described. I am going to show you everything, one part at a time, without rushing and without empty sensationalism, only the truth in all its depth. If this content interests you, like the video and subscribe to the channel, because this is only the beginning of what we are going to discover together. Virginia Beach, 1936. It is nighttime. There is a simple, almost austere room, containing a bed, a chair, and a window overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Lying on that bed, with his eyes closed and his hands crossed over his chest, is a man who, within a few minutes, will begin speaking about events that will occur almost 100 years later. His name is Edgar Cayce, and what he is about to say will change the way we understand the sky. Cayce was not a carnival charlatan. During the day, he was a photographer, a family man, and a devout Christian who, at many moments, deeply doubted his own gifts, because what happened to him disturbed him just as much as it fascinated the people around him. When he entered that trance state, his voice changed. His words became precise and technical, and sometimes he spoke in languages he could not speak while awake. When he awakened, he remembered nothing. Everything was recorded by his assistants. More than 14,000 readings in total were archived, classified, and remain available today at the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. However, there is one reading that went almost unnoticed for decades. Reading 3976, given on January 11, 1936. In it, Cayce speaks about planetary cycles, geopolitical transformations, and a collective spiritual awakening. At one specific moment, almost in passing, he mentions something that his assistants underlined with two red lines in the margin of the document. When the sky displays its crimson sign in the third month, the souls that have prepared their consciousness will recognize the threshold. The third month, March. For years, scholars of Cayce debated which year, which event, and which threshold he meant. Some connected it with eclipses, others with auroras, while others simply filed it away as a spiritual metaphor and moved on. But tonight, while looking at that red moon in the sky of 2026, something fits together in a way that cannot be ignored. It is not only the image, it is also the context, because Cayce did not speak about the red sign in isolation. He placed it within a broader description of the state of the world, a divided world, a world in which the great powers would be under maximum tension, a world in which technology would have advanced more rapidly than human consciousness, a world in which millions of people would feel lost, disconnected, and hungry for something that money and screens could not give them. Does that sound familiar? Look at what is happening in 2026. Tensions between geopolitical blocs that have been escalating for years, a collective identity crisis, an entire generation desperately searching for purpose, and a worldwide emotional exhaustion that psychologists are already calling the great spiritual fatigue of the 21st century. Cayce saw all of it, and he said that precisely at that moment, at that exact point in human history, the sky would send a sign, not to frighten humanity and not to announce the end, but to remind humanity that something greater was at stake, something transcending borders, conflicts, algorithms, and screens, something living inside every person who, at this moment, feels that there is more, that there must be more, and that this cannot be the only purpose of being alive. Cayce believed deeply in the soul. He believed that every human being has a specific mission, a unique vibration, and a contract with the universe that they signed before birth. He believed that certain cosmic events, certain alignments, and certain signs in the sky function as reminders, as calls for attention from the universe, as though existence itself were saying to you, "Hey, you are becoming distracted. Return to what truly matters." That is what the red sign is, not a threat, but an invitation. To understand completely what Cayce meant, however, you need to know something about the science behind this moon, something astronomers explain in one way and spirituality explains in a completely different way. When the two explanations are brought together, what you discover will leave you speechless. Let us move to part 2. Astronomers have an explanation. Of course they do, they always have one, and there is nothing wrong with that. In fact, it is fascinating. But there is a point where the scientific explanation ends and something that no instrument can measure begins. That point is precisely where things become interesting. First, let us examine what science says. A red or crimson moon occurs primarily for two reasons. The first is atmospheric. When the moon is close to the horizon, its light passes through more layers of the atmosphere, and the shorter wavelengths, the blues and violets, are scattered. What reaches your eyes consists of the longer wavelengths, red, orange, and crimson. It is pure physics. The second reason is more dramatic, elevated solar activity. This is where the subject begins to become interesting. The Sun is currently in an extraordinary phase of its 11-year cycle. Solar cycle 25 reached its maximum near the end of 2024, and its effects are still being strongly felt in 2026. The geomagnetic storms generated during this cycle have produced auroras at unusual latitudes, affected satellites, caused interruptions in global communication systems, and painted the sky red on nights like this one. NASA documents it, and observatories record it. It is real, measurable, and predictable within certain limits. But here comes the question that science cannot answer. Why now? Why does this solar cycle in this year and at this specific moment in human history produce this phenomenon with such intensity? Why do millions of people looking at that moon feel something extending beyond aesthetic admiration? Why is there an emotional, almost physical resonance that cannot be explained through equations? Carl Jung spoke about this. He called it synchronicity, the idea that certain external events and internal states align in a manner that is not causal but meaningful, that the universe, in some way beyond our understanding, arranges coincidences carrying messages, and that when something outside you affects you deeply, it is because something inside you is already searching for exactly that. Quantum physicists, although proceeding much more cautiously, have begun exploring similar territory: quantum non-locality, entanglement, and the idea that the universe is not a collection of separate objects, but a profoundly interconnected system in which everything influences everything else. Without having studied quantum physics, Cayce described something very similar in his readings. He said that the cosmos is not indifferent to humanity, that there is an intelligence organizing the cycles of the universe in relation to the spiritual development of souls, and that the sun, moon, and planets are not merely balls of gas and rock, but active participants within a greater system that includes consciousness. That may sound mystical, but listen to this. In 2024, a team of researchers from the HeartMath Institute published a study showing statistically significant correlations between solar geomagnetic activity and the collective emotional states of human populations. The stronger the solar storm, the more frequently people reported anxiety, a sense of urgency, spiritual awakening, and a search for meaning. This is not a metaphor, it is data. Earth's magnetic field, affected by solar activity, interacts literally with the electromagnetic field of the human heart. When that interaction intensifies, something occurs within collective psychology that does not have a completely satisfactory explanation from the perspective of materialistic reductionism. Something moves. Something awakens. That is exactly what Cayce said would happen when the red sign appeared. He did not say that the world would end or that a catastrophe was approaching. He said humanity would enter a state of greater spiritual receptivity, as though the cosmos were turning up the volume so that those with ears to hear could finally listen. The question is, what exactly are you supposed to hear? Cayce was very specific about that, and what he said connects directly with what is happening geopolitically in the world right now in a way that will surprise you. Stay with me, because that is what we will examine next. The year is 1943. The Second World War is at its most brutal point. Edgar Cayce, already ill and worn down by decades of readings that drained his vitality, gave a series of sessions concerning the future of the world, what would happen after the war, how global power would be reorganized, which nations would rise, which would fall, and which tensions would define the century that was beginning. His words were ignored for decades, until the world began to resemble exactly what he had described. He spoke about Russia. He said that Russia, following a period of ideological darkness, would emerge as a spiritual force in the world, and that its role would not be military or economic, but catalytic, creating a crisis that would force the West to look at itself. He spoke about China. He said that the sleeping giant would awaken and that its awakening would change the balance of power in a way the Western world was not prepared to manage. He spoke about the Middle East. He said that this region would remain the point of greatest tension for generations and that any resolution to that tension, should it ever arrive, would be spiritual before it was political. Now look at 2026, the conflict in Eastern Europe that has spent years redefining global alliances, the technological and economic competition between the United States and China that is literally dividing the world into two blocks, the tensions in the Middle East that cannot find a diplomatic resolution, the crisis affecting international institutions, and the widespread feeling that the world order we once knew is being replaced by something that still has no clear form. Cayce saw it. But here is what distinguishes Cayce's vision from any conventional geopolitical analysis. He did not see these events as inevitable tragedies. He saw them as contractions, as the labor pains preceding the birth of something new. He used exactly that metaphor. He said humanity was in the process of giving birth to a new form of collective consciousness, that the crises were not the end, but the pressure necessary for something higher to emerge, and that every conflict, every tension, and every breaking point carried within it the seed of a profound transformation. He said the red sign in the sky would appear precisely at the moment of maximum contraction, immediately before the birth. Think about it from a spiritual perspective. Whenever something new is about to be born, there is always a moment of maximum darkness, maximum pain, and maximum confusion. Spiritual traditions throughout the world recognize this. The dark night of the soul in Christian mysticism, the Kali Yuga in Hindu tradition, and the belief that the moment immediately before dawn is the darkest. Cayce said that the souls who remained awake during that moment would play a crucial role, not as political leaders or warriors, but as anchors, as people who, through their level of consciousness, spiritual connection, and ability to remain peaceful and loving in the middle of chaos, would literally stabilize the collective energetic field. That may sound grandiose, perhaps excessively so, but something inside you resonates while you listen to this, something recognizes it and says yes. If you have made it this far into the video, if something moved inside you when you saw that red moon tonight, and if you have spent some time feeling that there is something more you are supposed to do, become, or understand, Cayce would say that it is not a coincidence. He would say that you are exactly the type of soul he described, the kind of person who awakens when the sign appears, and the kind of consciousness the world needs precisely at this moment. But to understand your role completely, you need to know something about what Cayce called the Akashic records and how they connect directly with this specific date, because there is a reason why March 3rd is not a random number. What I discovered while researching this left me speechless. There is no such thing as chance. That is something Cayce repeated throughout dozens of his readings. What human beings call coincidence is simply a pattern we have not yet learned how to read, and the universe in its infinite intelligence operates with a precision surpassing every mathematical system we have invented. The Akashic records are a central part of this idea. Cayce described them as a kind of cosmic library, a field of information recording everything that has happened, everything that is happening, and every possibility of what could happen. It was not a metaphor. To Cayce, it was literal, and while in his trance states, he claimed to access that field directly in order to obtain information about past lives, illnesses, and future events. What does March 3rd have to do with all of this? In sacred numerology, the number 3 possesses a meaning transcending cultures and traditions. It is the number of the Trinity, body, mind, and spirit. It is the number of creation, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. It is the number of the bridge between the human and the divine, between the visible and the invisible, and between what was and what will be. March is the 3rd month. It is the 3rd day. The year is 2026. 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 6 equals 10, and 1 plus 0 equals 1. The number of origin, the point of beginning, 331. Within the esoteric traditions Cayce studied, this numerical combination represents a portal, a moment of renewal, and a point in time when the energies of creation are especially active and receptive. It is not witchcraft, and it is not superstition. It is a way of reading the language of the universe that thousands of years of human wisdom have validated in ways we are only beginning to understand scientifically. There is something more. In reading 3976-26, immediately after mentioning the crimson sign in the 3rd month, Cayce says something his interpreters did not know how to process for decades. On that day, those who search within the records will find their names written in light. What does it mean to find your name written in light within the records? Cayce explained it in later readings. He said that every soul, before incarnating, inscribes within the Akashic records its purpose, its mission, the experiences it has chosen to have, and the lessons it has come to learn. At certain moments of intense cosmic energy, that inscription becomes more accessible and more audible, as though the signal were becoming clearer and you could hear more distinctly what your own soul came here to do. This is one of those moments. I am not telling you this so that you become euphoric or begin believing you possess special powers. I am telling you because there is something extremely practical and concrete within it. When people pass through periods of intense geomagnetic activity like the one we are experiencing tonight, many spontaneously report very specific experiences, vivid dreams containing clear messages, unexplained physical sensations, recurring thoughts concerning their purpose, and synchronous encounters with people or information arriving precisely when they are needed. Has anything like that happened to you recently? Because if the answer is yes, Cayce would say that it is not your imagination. He would say that it is the universe fulfilling its side of the agreement. But there is a condition. There is always a condition. Cayce was very clear. The sign does not do the work for you. It does not automatically enlighten you simply because you have seen it. What it does is create the optimal conditions for you to choose to awaken. It is an invitation, not a guarantee. It is an opening, not an imposition. The way you respond to that invitation, and what you do with this night, this moon, and this information, will determine whether you cross the threshold or merely observe it from the outside. How do you cross that threshold? Cayce gave very specific answers, and some of them will surprise you because there is nothing mystical about them. They are simple, human, and deeply practical. That is what comes in Part 5. Many people expect spiritual awakening to resemble a movie, a white light, a voice from the sky, or a dramatic moment when everything suddenly changes and you are never the same person again. Cayce said that this is not how it works. He said that genuine awakening is silent, gradual, and profoundly ordinary. It does not occur on mountains or inside temples, but within ordinary conversations, small decisions, and moments when you choose love instead of fear while nobody is watching. He left highly specific instructions for the souls who would awaken during the red sign. The first instruction was to listen to your body. Cayce was a pioneer in understanding the human body as a spiritual system before a physical one. In his medical readings, which are the most numerous and have received the greatest historical verification, he described the body as the temple of the soul. He said that during periods of intense cosmic activity such as this one, the body receives information before the mind does. Sensations in the chest, tingling, intense dreams, and changes in appetite or sleep. Do not ignore them. Do not automatically medicate them. Sit with them and listen to them. Ask yourself what they are telling you. The second instruction was to examine your relationships. This may sound ordinary, but Cayce insisted that karma, the spiritual learning each soul needs to complete, is resolved primarily through your relationships with your family, partner, friends, and enemies. He said that during moments of transition, relationships requiring healing become illuminated. The people with whom you have unfinished business appear, either physically or within your thoughts. It is not a coincidence. It is the universe arranging the conditions necessary for you to complete what you came here to complete. The third instruction was to create something. It does not matter what, a song, a piece of writing, a garden, or a meal. Cayce said that creativity is the soul's most direct form of expression, that when you create, you align yourself with the intelligence that created the universe, and that during moments of elevated cosmic energy, creativity flows with unusual ease for those who allow themselves to open to it. Tonight, tomorrow, or sometime this week, create something, anything, without judging it and without requiring it to be perfect. Simply do it. The fourth instruction was to serve. This is the most powerful and the simplest. Cayce constantly repeated one phrase throughout his readings: service to others is the most direct path to God. Not ritual, elaborate meditation, or esoteric knowledge, but service, helping someone, relieving a burden, and offering your time, attention, and genuine presence to another human being. He said that every act of genuine service inscribes something within the Akashic records, leaving a trace of light that transcends this lifetime. The fifth instruction, and the one you probably least expected, was this: stay informed, but do not poison yourself. Cayce lived in an age without social media, yet he perfectly described the phenomenon we would experience. He said that during times of transition, humanity would be bombarded with information designed to generate fear and paralysis, and that the spiritual challenge of that age would be to discern which information elevates your consciousness and which information merely drains you. Look at what you consume, what you read, what you watch, and what you listen to, not from a place of judgment but from a place of honesty. Does this make me clearer, more loving, and more capable of serving, or does it make me more anxious, reactive, and diminished? Choose while using that question as your compass. These 5 instructions are not abstract philosophy. They are a protocol for living through periods of transition. Cayce said that those who practiced them during and after the red sign would witness changes in their lives that they could not rationally explain, but would deeply recognize as correct, as though they had finally entered the path they had always known, somewhere deep inside, they were meant to follow. But one final piece of the puzzle remains. Something Cayce said about what comes after the red sign, about the kind of world that emerges on the other side of this threshold. It is the most hopeful and challenging thing you will hear today. Cayce was never a prophet of the apocalypse. Although many people quote him in discussions of catastrophe and the end of the world, if you read his complete readings honestly and within their proper context, you discover something completely different. You discover radical, unwavering, and profound hope. Yes, Cayce spoke about geological changes, transformations on the surface of the planet, and periods of chaos and reorganization, but he always placed those changes within a greater narrative of evolution, collective spiritual progress, and humanity moving, although painfully, toward a higher expression of itself. What did he see following the sign? First, he spoke about a reorganization of global power. He said that power structures operating through fear and control would encounter increasing resistance, not necessarily violent resistance but vibrational resistance, and that a critical mass of human consciousness would reach a level at which it would simply stop supporting systems that did not serve the dignity of the soul. He said that this critical mass, this percentage of awakened humanity, was smaller than we might imagine. Cayce mentioned a number that his interpreters have debated. All of humanity did not need to awaken, only a sufficiently large part was required to tip the balance. Second, he spoke about transformed medicine. He said humanity would discover that most physical illnesses have roots in unresolved emotional and spiritual patterns, that medical science would eventually reunite with ancient spiritual wisdom, and that what we currently call alternative medicine and conventional medicine would merge into something more complete and effective. Look at what is happening in 2026. The neuroscience of emotions, psychoneuroimmunology, studies concerning meditation and neuroplasticity, and the growing recognition that the mind and body form a single system. Cayce saw it 90 years ago. Third, and this is the most personal point for you, he spoke about individual roles in the new era. He said that there would not be one messiah, one leader, or one central figure guiding the transition. He said that leadership in the new era would be decentralized and that every awakened soul would possess a specific role, perhaps appearing small from the outside, but crucial from the perspective of the records. There would be teachers in kitchens and offices, not only inside temples. There would be spiritual guides who would never write a book or deliver a TED Talk, but whose presence, energy, and way of relating to others would transform everything they touched. Does that sound like you? If you have spent some time feeling that you have something to offer the world, something you do not know exactly how to name but feel with certainty, Cayce would say that this is neither ego nor fantasy. It is memory. It is your soul remembering the agreement it made before coming here. In Cayce's vision, the red sign tonight is the reminder, the call, the moment when the universe says, "It is time." You already have everything you need. There are no more excuses and no more delays. The world in which we live in 2026 is hungry for people who dare to live according to their deepest truth, not according to fear, comparison, or what they are supposedly expected to become based on external expectations, but according to the soul, from that place within you that knows and has always known what truly matters. The red sign is not the end. It is the beginning of what humanity can become when enough of us choose to awaken. That awakening begins tonight, with you and with this decision. What comes at the conclusion of this video is not merely a reflection. It is a question I want you to ask yourself, a question that could change everything. There is a question Edgar Cayce considered at the end of many of his readings. He did not say it aloud. He left it suspended in the air, floating there, so that every person could accept or reject it according to their degree of openness, their courage, and the readiness of their heart to hear the truth. The question is this: are you living the life your soul chose, or the life your fear constructed? Stop here for a moment. Truly stop. Do not continue operating on autopilot. Feel that question. Allow it to descend from your head into your chest, into the place where what you truly know about yourself resides. It is the place you rarely visit because it hurts slightly, but whenever you do visit it, you immediately recognize it as the only truth that matters. Are you living the life your soul chose, or the life your fear constructed? Most of us know the answer. We also know that there is a distance, sometimes small and sometimes enormous, between what we feel we came here to become and what we are actually being every day, between the version of you existing within that deep place in your chest and the version appearing at work, on social media, and in everyday conversations. That distance is not failure. It is not evidence that something inside you is broken. It is the soul's creative tension, the space in which genuine growth occurs, and the playing field on which spiritual character is formed. Nights like this, signs like this red moon, and messages like those Cayce recorded with such precision exist to disturb the distance, make it visible, and provide the discomfort that always precedes genuine change. Now I want you to consider something. Throughout this entire video, we have spoken about Cayce, the moon, geopolitics, the Akashic records, and solar cycles. All of that is fascinating. It is real, and it carries weight. But if you leave here with nothing more than new information inside your head and nothing different within your heart, then this video has not fulfilled its true purpose. Cayce did not want admirers. He wanted awakened souls. There is an enormous difference between admiring a spiritual idea and embodying it, between finding the concept of awakening interesting and actually taking even one small step toward a life that is more aligned with who you truly are. Therefore, I am going to ask you to do something concrete. Tonight, before going to sleep, take exactly 5 minutes without your phone, without music, and without anything else. Sit or lie down, close your eyes, and silently ask yourself this question. What am I most afraid to do, even though deep inside I know I must do it? Do not analyze the answer, judge it, or dismiss it before it has finished taking form. The first answer that appears, before your rational mind begins constructing arguments against it, is the genuine answer. That is your soul speaking. That is what the universe has been attempting to tell you for some time through all the signs you have been receiving and may have been ignoring because life is noisy and fear is convincing. That is your next step. You do not have to do everything at once. You do not have to quit anything tomorrow or reinvent your entire life this week. Cayce was very clear about this. The spiritual path is neither a sprint nor a leap into the void. It is a series of small, conscious decisions made one at a time, which, when accumulated over time, produce transformations that appear miraculous from the outside but feel like the most natural thing in the world from within, like returning home. There is something more I need to tell you before concluding. The world in which we live in 2026 is passing through something unprecedented. The speed of change, the complexity of global challenges, social fragmentation, and the crisis of meaning affecting entire generations. All of this is real, and it is heavy. It is extremely easy to feel that one person cannot make any real difference in the face of all of it. Cayce, however, possessed a radically different perspective. He said that humanity's collective field of consciousness functions like a living fabric, that every soul choosing to awaken and every person deciding to live according to their deepest truth instead of fear alters that fabric, strengthens it, and raises its frequency. He said that this elevation is contagious, not in the superficial sense of trends on social media, but in the profound sense of resonance. When you are at peace, you generate peace within those around you. When you act from love, you open possibilities that fear closes. When you dare to be authentic, you give others permission to be authentic as well. That is not cheap poetry. It is the physics of consciousness. It is what occurs when enough people stop living in survival mode and begin living with purpose. Cayce said that the red sign marked the beginning of that process on a global scale. Not the end of anything, but the beginning of everything. There is a phrase Cayce spoke during one of his final readings, when he was already extremely ill, only a few weeks before his death in January 1945. His collaborators described it as having been spoken with a calmness and certainty that left all of them speechless. He said, "Do not despair because of the times. Be the light you seek within them." In 2026, with everything that is happening and with all the legitimate reasons for anxiety, exhaustion, and doubt, those words are not escapism or spiritual naivete. They are the most practical and powerful instructions anyone can receive during a period of transition. Do not wait for the world to improve before allowing yourself to feel better. Improve yourself and observe how the world around you responds. Do not wait for other people to awaken before things can change. Awaken yourself and discover that you were never alone on that path. March 3rd, 2026, will end. The red moon will disappear. The sun will rise again tomorrow. The news will continue its cycles of fear, social media will continue producing its noise, and the world will remain complex, unpredictable, and sometimes frightening. But you can emerge from this night slightly different, a little more conscious, a little more directed, and a little more connected with who you truly are and what genuinely matters. Multiply that by all the people currently looking at this moon from different places across the planet and feeling called towards something greater. That is what Cayce called the Great Transformation. It does not come from the sky. It comes from you tonight. Look at that moon one final time, if you can, and remember that you are not merely someone looking at it. You are part of the reason it shines. If this video touched your soul, share it with someone else who is also searching. Like the video if you would like more content of this kind, and subscribe to the channel, because this is only the beginning of a journey worth taking together. I will see you at the next sign. MM.